distinguished participants, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to warmly greet you today on the occasion of the opening ceremony of the 10th World Congress for Nurse Anesthetists. It is my pleasure and it is my honor to welcome you here in Ljubljana. Our afternoon is to be marked by relaxed companionship and some memorable performances of Slovenian artists. In Slovenia, we believe that your home is where your heart is. Furthermore, in Slovenian language, the word gostoljubje, hospitality, means love for the guests. And this all speaks to the fact that we are really happy to have you here today. You've seen some images of our capital, Ljubljana, which is really a very nice city. And furthermore, again, Ljubljana is somehow related to love. Because in Slovenian language, ljubezen means love, and ljubezen, Ljubljana, the beloved city. Talking about love, ladies and gentlemen, let us now extend a warm welcome to the President of the 2012 Congress, nursing officer from University Medical Center, Ljubljana, Division of Surgery, Clinical Department of Anesthesiology and Intensive Therapy, very friendly and very nice person that we all know. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Mrs. Zorica Kardoš. Good evening, Zorica, and please be welcome.
Dear participants, honorable lecturers, dear guests, IFNA colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and my pleasure to welcome you to the Jubilee 10th of IFNA Congress. For the first time in its existence, the professional group of nurses and health technicians in anesthesiology, intensive care, and transfusiology under the auspices of IFNA is organizing a congress of such a dimension, something which we are very proud of. We are also very proud that the founders of IFNA are with us today. Mr. Hermi Leonard, who we have an award named after, and Mr. Ronald Kolk, who had. And I would like to warmly welcome our colleague, Mrs. Veronika Spindler, who has been a member of IFNA's organizing committee from its very beginning and has set the foundation for our cooperation and membership in the IFNA. I'm happy to welcome eminent lecturers and colleagues from 34 countries from the whole world, so to speak, in our beautiful country. At the last Congress, the slogan was, "Meet the young international professionals." This time it will be forward together. Each participant will find something of interest in our rich, broadly based professional program, not only nurses in anesthesia and intensive care, but also colleagues from other professional fields who will be joining us until the 29th of May, when they conclude the Congress. The situation in healthcare, not only in Slovenia, but also worldwide, is becoming more demanding due to various austerity measures. Nurses' responsibilities are getting new dimensions, and we are being given new tasks and competencies. And we perform tasks that we have not so long ago fallen under competencies of others. This is a welcome trend, and it has to be followed. For this path, fast acquisition of new knowledge is crucial. So this Congress is an excellent opportunity to share knowledge, meet new people, learn from one another, and teach others. In building our professional's profile, our priority has to be education, along with the research and the search for new paths and theories for our work. That is why we need congresses like this, and we are proud and pleased to be able to organize and host the 10th World Congress of Nurse Anesthetists. There will be a plenty of events where we will socialize, share experience, get to know each other, make new contacts, or, if only for a short time, simply redirect our thoughts from the demanding work we perform and gain new strength. Some activities are planned, some you can choose for yourself. I wish for everybody attending our Congress in the month of May, the most beautiful month in the beautiful white Ljubljana, to live full of knowledge and memories of having good time with others, tasting good food, enjoying the sunshine, and much, much more. You're welcome.
Thank you so much, Zorica. Zorica, I don't know if you all know, but Zorica, it means dawn. It means the first day, the awakening of the day. And let me, ladies and gentlemen, talk a little bit, as Zorica just said, about May, about spring. Spring is that happy time when the grayness of winter morning is chased away by sunbeams. Spring is a sign of joy, a sign of awakening nature. It is an announcer of hope. Spring is a beauty of life, a scream of joy. And I'm happy to say that we are next about to listen to one old Slovenian song. When I say old, it means that I refer to the golden 60s. And the song is Don't wait for May, ne čakaj pomladi. Don't wait for spring, ne čakaj na maj. And it goes like this. Don't wait for spring, don't wait for May. Why care for green grass? Heart doesn't wait. Beats tick-tock, calling for love. Why to wait for May? And I agree, why to wait for May? Anyhow, there's with us Ljubljana Mandolin Orchestra, Maestro Andrej, and singer Natasha. Ne čakaj pomladi, ne čakaj na maj. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the flag ceremony will begin. I would like you, Zorica, to join me onto the stage, and a big applause for the flag ceremony.
The first flag is carried by Executive Director of IFNA, Mr. Pascal Roth. Then we have Afghanistan, carried by Anna Vranesh. Austria, Marianne Wagner. Belgium, Samira Montaraghi. Benin, Sara Jaklic. Cambodia, Yaseang Sotea. Congo of Democratic Republic of Asja Jaklic. Croatia, Adriano Friganovic. Denmark, Dorte Söderberg. Ethiopia, Tinkara Pacek. Finland, Maria-Lisa Italo-Airo. France, Marie-Ange Saget. Gabon, Rudi Kočevar. Germany, Heike Strunk. Ghana, Susanna Nang. Hungary, Brigitta Erbežnik. Iceland, Stefan Alfredson. Indonesia, Zlatko Grubešić. Italy, Zorica Panić. Ivory Coast, Miha Arvaj. Jamaica, Asim Kenjar. Luxembourg, Pajo Bučić. Morocco, Mateja Tomšić. Netherlands, our President Jaap Hökman. Nigeria, Nevenka Žnidaršić. Norway, Marit Vasboden Olsson. Poland, Robert Zopic. Serbia, Lavinel Vino. South Korea, Chang Kae-song. Spain, Anna Strauch. Sweden, Ingrid Andersson. Switzerland, Christian Herrion. Taiwan, Hue Du-yang. Tunisia, Monsef Yandoubi. Uganda, Natalia Bruncic. United Kingdom, Manda Dune. United States of America, Jackie Rose and Deborah Molina. The INA President, and Slovenia.
And Slovenia, yes, what a beautiful sight. I would like to ask you for a big applause, because these flags are so wonderful. And ladies and gentlemen, all these flags are part of this wonderful world. And today, standing on this stage, we shall hear Ljubljana Mandolin Orchestra and a song, that very old one and very known one. What a wonderful world. Maestra, please.
I see trees that are green, red roses to
Thank you so much, Natasha. In pomislim, kako čudovit je ta svet. Thank you to all the flag carriers. You can just take your places in the hall, please. And a big applause again, because they were wonderful, I guess. That was Ljubljana Mandolin Orchestra. And we were talking about this wonderful world. And I should say that Slovenia is also part of this wonderful world, because Slovenia offers a unique glimpse into a colorful variety of European heritage, thought, and emotion, with its position at the precise confluence of the Slavic, Romanic, and German worlds. Having been enriched by its neighboring culture, Slovenia has managed to retain its own unique culture and character throughout centuries, mainly through its poetic and literary awareness, through its attachment to the land itself, its textures and smells, and the mysterious curvings of its mountains. Yes, without any doubt, Slovenia is also part of this wonderful world. Ladies and gentlemen, now I would like to welcome our next distinguished speaker, the IFNA President, Mr. Jaap Hoekman. Please be welcome. Good evening. And the word is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President. As the President of the IFNA, it's an honor and a privilege to welcome you all to this 10th World Congress for Nurse Anesthesists in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Unfortunately, I am sorry I have to start with a short remembrance. I would like to commemorate with you a very appreciated, loved colleague of us, Mrs. Tula Sora from Finland. She died on the 6th of December 2011 as a result of breast cancer. For those of you who didn't know her, she supported IFNA from the beginning. She was one of the founders from IFNA starting in 1988. Always positive and bringing up good ideas. She has been very active as a country representative and working in several positions for IFNA and the Finnish association SASH. Some of you might still know her as organizer of the World Congress Helsinki 2002 and editor of the history book in 2010. She was convinced that IFNA could help nurse anesthetists around the world and bring them together as nurse professionals. She was one of us, and we were very privileged that we know her. A World Congress like this, besides learning and teaching, is also a place where a lot of different people and cultures meet. We make new friends and renew old friendships, even for life. Tula was a colleague and a friend of nurse anesthetist, and it hurts when we say goodbye. We all miss her. I would like a moment of silence, please. Thank you. This is awful difficult after such a nice presentation in front. Again, I would like to welcome you to the 10th World Congress for Nurse Anesthetists in Ljubljana, Slovenia. Drage Slovenski kolegi, kolegici, dragi kolegi. Okay, that's out. The rest I do in English, I'm sorry. Dear colleagues, special guests and friends, we hope all of you have had a very good journey to this beautiful country and you already have enjoyed the hospitality and kindness of the Slovenian people. On behalf of the International Federation of Nurse Anesthetists, IFNA, I would like to thank the CPC, but very much Mrs. Sorica Cardes and her team for all preparing and organization of this 10th World Congress. After years of preparation and hard working, this is for them the apotheosis and for you all. You did everything what is in your power to make us feel at home and develop a great scientific program, probably even more than that. Personally, I had the privilege to be here in Slovenia for several times now. Therefore, I can speak from experience. I have no doubt at all that you will steal the hearts of everyone in this Congress, as you did with mine. Therefore, I thank you all for inviting us and hosting us, not only as a president of IFNA, but also for myself. Also, I would like to thank the companies and the sponsors. Without them, these congresses are not possible, or at least very difficult. Finally, I would like to thank you all for being here. Without you, it is impossible. A congress like this is the result of years, meetings, planning, long discussions, and organizing with nerves of steel. Personally, I'm very impressed by the scientific program that is planned, the exhibition, Ljubljana, and the culture, and not least the friendly and very hospitable people. I'm sure that when you go home, you have learned a lot and will take a little bit of this country and the people with you. You all have great remembrance to this Congress. Today, we open the 10th World Congress with a lot of countries present. Please take the courage to speak with as much colleagues from other countries and continents as you can. I can tell you, you will go home as a different person. I wish you all a fantastic Congress. Thank you very much. Hvala.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jaap Hoekman. I am sure that we will hear some nice and encouraging thoughts from our next distinguished speaker, the IFNA Executive Director, Mr. Pascal Roth. Please be welcome.
Hvala. Dobar dan. Well, I would like to say welcome to everybody here. I will not do a long speech because I know that people then get bored of a long speech. There is maybe some persons I would like to introduce to you. They are very important for this event. You have to go back in the year 1978, where two nice nurse anesthetists met and decided to create something international. And we have the privilege tonight to have these two persons here with us. So they are not a couple. They know each other quite well, but the IFNA is their baby. So I would like to ask to Mr. Ron Kolk and to Helmi Lonert to stand up, please, because without them, we won't have the IFNA. So I hope that you will have time to get fun and you will learn a lot at this meeting. You will have the privilege also to share your experience and your working conditions with other colleagues. Take this time for speaking all together. It is important. We don't have such an event so often, so it's really good to meet some people from other parts of the world. Well, thank you, and thank you to the Slovene for organizing this nice meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Dear friends, it is my privilege to announce Mrs. Darinka Clements, President of the Slovenian Nurse Association. Please be welcome.
Dear President of the IFNA, Mr. Jaap Hoekman, Executive Director, Mr. Pascal Roth, President of the 2012 Congress, Mrs. Zorica Kardoš, members of the National Organizing and Scientific Committee, Mrs. Alexandra Stjepanović-Vračar and Mrs. Irena Buček-Hajdarović and your team, President of the Professional Group of Nurses and Nurse Assistants of Anesthesia, Intensive Therapy and Transfusiology, Mr. Dejan Dobršek, and all nurses, nurse assistants, doctors, and other members of the team, co-workers and health professionals, representatives of sponsors, other guests from all over the world. It is my great honor, privilege, and pleasure to welcome you on the 10th World Congress of IFNA in Ljubljana. Thank you that you have chosen our country and our capital as a hosting country and hosting capital between a lot of numerous cities and countries all over the world. This is the second time that such a great event with about 700-800 nurses is held here in Slovenia. The first one was in 2008 when we organized 17th WCET Congress of Enterostoma Therapists with about 1,500 peoples. Celebrating 10 years of the Congress with the motto, "Forward Together," very visionally, very enthusiastically, and very strong message to all participants and others as a multidisciplinary approach. So congratulations for this motto. It is important that the nursing profession in Slovenia too, it is important for the nursing professional in Slovenia too to organize such a great and important event in our country, and a special opportunity also to our professional work and voice of nurses, the opportunity for everyone to share knowledge, experiences, and organizing issues on the best way. In Slovenia, nurses and midwives are joined in one unique organization, which is also a regulatory body for both professions. Our organization consists of 11 regional organizations and 31 specific special groups. Between them, There is also a very important place for professional group of anesthesia, intensive therapy, and transfusiology. Current and future challenges for nurses and other health workers and co-workers have a great influence, good and bad, regarding education, Bologna process, unemployment, reducing resources, economical migrations, but there is also a sharing of knowledge, exchanging information and best practices, doing research projects together, etc. The whole world is facing with economical, political, financial crisis, and of course, with a huge crisis and changes of values. Not only professional, but only personal ones. Nurses, as advocates of patients, try to maintain quality, safety, and empathic approach to the patients, and also try to have influence to the health political systems in their countries. This is the power of nurses. We hope that the Congress will be a good opportunity to do all these good things. Dear participants, I wish you will have really a pleasant and successful work and stay here in Slovenia, hoping you will find some time to get to know our capital and visit some of the gems of our highly picturesque and beautiful country. And I hope you will conclude your visit to Slovenia with the best possible impressions. Thank you.
Thank you. Culturally, as you may know, Slovenia presents a diversified tradition. Slovenians take great pride in one of the oldest philharmonics in Europe, and we were immensely flattered by an article in the Le Figaro journal that described Ljubljana as a city where classical concerts attract more visitors than football games. Ljubljana is the city where music is everywhere, and we say life without music would be a big mistake. So we are happy to have Ljubljana Mandolin Orchestra with us and Maestro Andrej, and we will hear some more music. Please, Andrej. Thank you, Andrei. That was fun. That was great. So, ladies and gentlemen, we came to one of the highlights of this opening ceremony because presents are always highlights. And I guess that Mrs. Kardos, Zorica is very busy today, isn't she? I would like to ask you to come to me and help me, or I will help her, because we have some presents, don't we? Yes, we do. That's great. Zorica, I think that the presents aren't for me, but for the founders of the IFNA.
Yes.
And should I announce the founders?
Yes, please.
I may? Great. So the first present goes to Mr. Ronald Koch. Thank you. And there is another box for Mr. Ernie Leunert. Thank you for being with us. Thank you so much. And one more present for one more founder. She's Slovenian, I guess, isn't she?
Yes.
Yes, she is. Mrs., your colleague, Mrs. Veronika Spindler. And she is with us. Please be welcome.
Hvala, nisem bila pripravljena, da bom nastopila na tem odru. Zahvaljujem se vsem vam, ki sem z vami delala. Se upravičujem, če sem bila in sem bila stroga in sitna. Zdaj sem sam še zadovoljna upokojenka. Začetek je važen, nadaljevanje neizmerno pomembno. Srečna sem, zahvaljujem se moji kolegici, gospej Zorici Kardoš, da je to speljala. Vsem vam želim ogromno osebne sreče in veliko uspehov v vašem delu. Rada sem delala z vami. Hvala.
Thank you to both of you. And if I may, I will just translate some words. So Mrs. Veronika said, thank you. She said many thanks. Then she explained that she was sometimes a little bit nervous and annoying, but now she's only happy because she says the beginning is important, but how we continue our works, our beginnings, is even more important. Of course, she wishes us a lot of success, and she gives a lot of thanks to Zorica and her team. So thank you again, and a big applause again, because this was in Slovenian. Thank you. And now we will just say another thank, and this thank is going to Ljubljana Mandolin Orchestra, because they're going bye-bye. Thank you. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the first part of the opening ceremony, and we will just start with the second part. I am happy to say that we are next about to listen keynote lecture, Anesthetic Nurses, Stepping Towards a New Professional Development, performed by Dr. Polona Selic. Let me say some words about Dr. Polona Selic. She is a clinical and forensic psychologist and senior researcher at the Department of Family Medicine in the Faculty of Medicine of the University of Ljubljana, obviously Slovenia. Currently, she is a senior researcher in the study possible uses of modern information technologies in doctor-patient communication in family medicine. Her bibliography contains over 200 items. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Polona Selic.
You better. Ladies and gentlemen, while I was preparing this speech, I was somehow inspired by the thought of Benjamin Franklin, who said, "Human felicity is produced not so much by great pieces of good fortune that seldom happen, as by little advantages that occur every day." In his time, Benjamin Franklin was a leading writer, publisher, inventor, diplomat, scientist, and philosopher. In my opinion, one of his most important legacies was his belief in recognizing and embracing everyday opportunities. I would like to dedicate this belief to our dear hosts, who I would like to thank for inviting me to take part in such an important event. Today, I would like to share my view of anesthetic nurses stepping towards a new professional development. I will discuss several issues. Firstly, different models of anesthesia administration and what is expected of anesthetic nurses. Secondly, the possibility of professional conflict between nurse anesthetists and anesthesiologists. Thirdly, possible problems with self-assessment in anesthetic nurses, and also the problem of the high turnover in nurses and the possibility of anesthetic nurses going on strike. Finally, I will introduce the idea of the anesthetic consultant nurse role as a feasible concept. In some European countries, anesthesia is administered only by doctors. However, in several other European countries and in the United States of America, non-physicians also administer or monitor anesthetics. In many developing nations, non-physicians are the only people who administer anesthesia. Worldwide, most practitioners who are not physicians come from a nursing background. In some countries, particularly in Europe, nurse anesthetists provide anesthetics under the supervision of a specialist anesthesiologist. They often work as a team with one nurse anesthetist and one anesthesiologist for each patient. In other areas, nurse anesthetists provide anesthetics under the direction of a surgeon, cardiologist, or radiologist who may be operating or performing a procedure on the patient at the same time. In a few countries, nurse anesthetists are legally allowed to practice without any supervision from a doctor. The anesthesia workforce in Europe is understaffed and may not meet the growing demands of surgery. In many European countries, where responsibilities are identified and some task substitution occurs, the anesthesia service is provided by a team both physician and non-physician members. The availability, roles, and functions of non-physician anesthesia team members in European countries have been studied. The authors found that each European country has its own unique type of non-physician anesthesia team member, and that the roles of these vary considerably due to varying levels of organization. In mainland Europe, the independent scope of the practice of nurse anesthetists has been limited, while in the United Kingdom, possible new roles for nurses have been suggested. In the past, the American-based ether anesthetic technique allowed for non-physician personnel to administer the drug. As nurses already played a role in assisting surgeons, it was logical for them to assist in anesthetic care. Anesthesia continued to develop as nursing specialty in the USA until physicians began to take on this work after the Second World War, probably due to payment arrangements. For 3 decades, between 1960s and 1990s, anesthesiology appeared to be a lucrative career choice for medical graduates, which led to considerable growth in the number of anesthesiologists. This situation provoked nurse anesthetists and strengthened their resolve to retain their range of work and maintain their professional status. Changes in payment regulations in the 1980s and 1990s threatened the US anesthesiologists' income. This led to reappraisal of the evidence on relative cost effectiveness and the safety of different anesthesia provider models. More recently, in the USA, the terms of engagement have shifted from disputes over evidence to political lobbying in order to promote the professional capabilities and status of each of the anesthesia providers. It appears that nurses also administered anesthesia in Canada in the early 20th century, especially those working in small rural hospitals across the country. The lack of physician specialty and poor coverage triggered the nurses' involvement in the administration of anesthesia, which lasted until the early 1950s. According to Dunlop and co-workers, in Canada at that time, there was a need for the administration of anesthesia, and nurses had the skills to provide it, since the flexibility in their nursing practice allowed them to fulfill that role. There was an increasing need for an anesthesia service that was not being carried out by physicians. However, this role ceased to exist in Canada while it became well established in the United States. Various legal cases from that time period and the substantially different results in Canadian and American cases provide some insight into reasons why nurse anesthetists were excluded from anesthesia practice in Canada. As the Canadian healthcare environment continues to change and the need for anesthesia services increases, new questions have begun to arise about the potential for an advanced practice role in anesthesia for Canadian nurses. The impact of different anesthesia providers on patient outcomes has been a research topic and the subject of policy debates for more than 40 years. Although some studies have indicated that qualifications make a difference to some outcomes, after an extensive literature review, Smith and co-workers concluded that it was not possible to draw a clear picture of outcome differences as a function of anesthesiologist versus nurse anesthetist. However, there might be other factors that could also affect outcomes. What is expected from anesthetic nurses? In 2003, World Health Organization adopted the European Strategy for Continuing Education for Nurses and Midwives. It declared that anesthetic nurses require a well-developed knowledge base along with specialist skills in both the technological and the caring dimension of anesthetic nursing in order to meet the complex needs of patients. Anesthetic nurses should be equipped with the expertise to make accurate and often rapid clinical assessments within the operating theater or clinical care environments, and to recognize and deal with the professional and ethical issues characteristic of these environments. It is stated in the strategy that the anesthetic nurse may work only in the theater environment, assisting the anesthesiologist with the induction, maintenance, and reversal of anesthesia, but this is a rather limited role. It is more usual to find the anesthetic nurse undertaking a holistic approach. While responsible for assisting the anesthesiologist, the nurse also undertakes the care of the patient from their preparation for surgery throughout anesthesia to the acute stage of the recovery until the patient is well enough to be discharged to the ward. The demand for anesthesia services is increasing in line with the aging population, and the shortage of available services is at its most dramatic in small rural hospitals. This might reflect on the development of the role of nurse anesthetist. Standardization of the training and practice in European nurse anesthetists would be beneficial for both patient safety and quality of care, as well as for nurses seeking to work in more than one European country. In the USA, the concept of anesthesiology assistant has been developing as an alternative to nurse anesthetist. The current fluidity in Europe will probably also settle into a new role of assistant anesthetist. These could be predominantly drawn from graduate nurses, but with some graduates in biological or medical sciences who would receive a further 2-year specialist training. To attract people of this caliber, their role will have to offer some degree of clinical autonomy over the management of general anesthesia. Considerations of safety will probably limit this autonomy, but the introduction of a computerized monitor of anesthetic depth and sophisticated communication systems should relieve concern about this development. The research findings suggest that, at least in the area of obstetric services, there may be no gain in anesthesia safety from any restrictions as to who can carry out these services. The use of nurse anesthetists may make it possible to provide obstetric anesthesia where anesthesiologists are not available due to costs or other issues of regulation and payment. As advanced practice roles become more widespread, nurses and other healthcare professionals are becoming more involved in innovation and service development. They are experiencing greater autonomy in many areas, particularly with regard to clinical examination and diagnosis. Education for advanced practice roles should equip students with various skills, especially clinical assessment, and these skills should underpin practitioners' autonomy. The expanded role includes clinical skills and responsibility for health promotion, education, supervision, leadership, and research and development. The legislation, range, and models have to be supported and further developed to promote the full scope of advanced practice, which will probably be required following the reorganization of healthcare services in many countries. Therefore, a restructuring of areas of responsibility between healthcare professionals is to be expected also in anesthesiology. It was not my intention to examine in depth the reasons why hospitals adopt specific anesthesia models, or the relative cost of alternative models and their implications for regulation and payment. The only evidence in favor of the provision of assistance for anesthesiologists seems to be that single-handed anesthesiologists generate higher anesthetic mortality than does a team system. Anesthesiologists provide most of the post-anesthetic care for patients after procedures under general or regional anesthesia and intravenous sedation. They must possess a wide range of knowledge and skills to evaluate, treat, and provide recommendations to improve the patient's recovery after the anesthetic, with the aim of reducing post-operative complications and providing optimal patient safety. Nurses from various fields have expanded their roles to meet the changing needs of patients and their profession. Apparently, there has been an ongoing process of re-evaluating the practice of anesthetic nurses due to confusion surrounding the accountability of nurses who work in an extended role between medical and the nursing professions. Published evidence shows that nurses can be as effective as doctors within these expanded roles, but there is a danger that gender issues can cloud the debate because of the general assumption that mostly nurses are female and mostly doctors are male. The roles of doctors and nurses should complement each other, and all practitioners should work for the benefit of patients in their care, rather than defending their traditional roles and status. In spite of this idea, there is apparently an ongoing struggle within anesthesiology. Which professional group, if any, overestimates themselves? Self-assessed performance seems closely related to generalized self-attributions and is minimally influenced by external feedback in the form of test scores, grades, or faculty assessments. Although valid self-assessment is fundamental to continuing professional competence, it is seldom explicitly taught in the training of health professionals. Of the many obstacles to enhancing professional skills, one of the most significant is the difficulty in assessing competency in professionalism and humanism. The assessment of these aspects has more in common with the approaches used in criticism of the arts than with those appropriate to the medical model. Quantitative tools, which are so effective in clarifying the etiology, pathophysiology, and treatment of disease, are often inappropriate and invalid when applied to the evaluation of professional and humanistic competence. Although assessing professionalism poses many challenges, testing and detecting changes in professionalism is impossible without measurement. Physicians' professionalism and humanism have become the focal point of the efforts of medical educators. This is because the public, various accrediting and licensing agencies, and the profession itself have expressed concerns about the apparent erosion of physicians' competence in these aspects of the art rather than the science of medicine. According to data collected in Slovenia, while researching coping and burnout in nurses and physicians in family medicine, differences between them were explained by the concept of professional role, expectations regarding this role, and competences developed or not. Nurses shown to be more competent in work-related interpersonal skills. The nursing profession has built professionalism and humanism into its own educational system, and this should be developed further. It should offer efficient competencies, expert knowledge, training, and experience in the interpersonal aspects of health provision, gathering concepts such as empathy, compassion, integrity, and respect into a cohesive whole. Perhaps nurses are the chosen profession to argue that the professionalism debate needs to, firstly, pay more attention to the academic environment in which students are educated. Secondly, to identify and define specific positive behaviors. Thirdly, to emphasize that the theory of professionalism must be constructed from a dialogue with those being educated. And finally, this debate must aim at a deeper understanding of teamwork and the role of nurses within a patient-centered health service. Leading workforce analysts predict that the shortages of nurses will worsen, although the current economic downturn might provide relief for some healthcare organizations. This is because registered nurses may remain in or re-enter the workforce as a result of self-imposed delays in retirement and job losses by other wage earners in their households. However, these gains could reverse once the economy rebounds. Recruitment and retention of qualified nurses will continue to be a challenge for healthcare organizations as the nursing workforce ages and the demand created by an aging baby boomer population outstrips the nurse supply. A professional work environment for nurses, particularly in the inpatient setting, is now recognized as important for retaining staff, achieving good nurse and patient outcomes, and providing safe patient care. Suggestions for improving the work environments of nurses have been advanced by a number of nursing and regulatory organizations, and several foundations have allocated funding for research into ways to improve the work environment. In 2006, researchers specified 2 dimensions of nursing organization: nurse staffing, and the work environment. The authors thought that higher staffing, better qualified nurses, a more stable staff, and a work environment that facilitates professional nursing autonomy would result in a better nurse and patient outcomes. The specified nurse job outcomes were satisfaction, stress, burnout, and turnover. Burnout, a unique job-related stress syndrome caused by chronic work stressors, is more predictive of people's intention to leave their jobs than job satisfaction. Literature shows that dissatisfied nurses are more likely to experience burnout and leave their jobs. The types and degree of work stressors that lead to burnout seems to have more to do with the characteristics of the work environment than with its type or individual factors. Factors preceding the intention to resign in nurses include burnout, work stress, lack of collaboration between healthcare professionals, ineffective management, job dissatisfaction, and demographic factors such as younger age, higher education, and having children in a household. Stress and also leadership issues have an influence on dissatisfaction and turnover in nurses. Better work environments have been associated with lower levels of burnout and better patients' outcomes, including lower mortality and higher satisfaction. In military organizations, similarly to findings in civilian samples, poor quality work environments are associated with less favorable work outcomes and quality of care ratings. A comparison between physicians and nurses working together as a team in family medicine in Slovenia showed burnout amongst physicians to be significantly higher than in nurses. In this study, 28% of nurses compared to 51% of doctors scored high on emotional exhaustion. 16% of nurses compared to 24% of doctors scored high on depersonalization, while 13% of nurses and 23% of doctors scored low on personal accomplishment. Strengthening protective factors at the organizational level, particularly cohesion within the work team, were measures introduced as adequate burnout-reducing measures in Slovenia. Positive assessment of autonomy, control over practice, and nurse-physician relationship indicate positive work environments, while the assessment of clinical expertise indicates a desirable level of skill. Both of these reflect favorably on the hospital work environment. Improving professional practice in the work environment and the clinical competence of nurses, as well as support of new staff, may reduce turnover and help to ensure a stable and qualified workforce. The level of both education and income have been found to be associated with job satisfaction, although the results for these factors were not consistent. Investigating possible changes in the sources of dissatisfaction over time has revealed that factors related to the work environment, rather than individual or demographic factors, were of most importance to the intention of nurses to resign. There are conclusive findings that nurses benefit from having a more collaborative work environment. In their professional role, nurses do not practice in isolation from their colleagues in the other healthcare professions. Although each profession contributes unique knowledge and skills to both the care of patients and to the healthcare system as a whole, there is a need for much more multidisciplinary work in a spirit of recognition and respect for each other's authority, responsibility, competence, and unique contribution. Thus, nurses must continue to build upon their initial professional education to be able to continue to take their full part as members of the multi-professional healthcare team, sharing both in decision-making and, when appropriate, in taking responsibility for leadership and for the outcome of the work of the team. In the past 2 decades, a substantial increase in attitudinal and industrial militancy has been noticed and analyzed in nurses. It has been shown that dissatisfaction with levels of autonomy, income, and intrinsic work rewards were of the greatest concern to nurses during the late 80s and contributed to their growing unrest and attitudinal militancy. At that time, measures such as professionalization and salary restructuring were suggested to help alleviate some of the grievances of nurses, but were predicted to be unlikely to resolve other important issues that contributed to their discontent. Nurses' strikes in many countries should have triggered a reflection upon professionalism and commitment to service. Nurses being treated only as workers and not given the opportunity to take decisions alongside gender issues relevant to a profession of mostly women working under a profession of mostly men were also raised, together with healthcare restructuring. This phenomena, so typical of the nursing profession, have had a significant impact on the work, consciousness, and militancy of nurses, and have shaped occupation-specific forms of resistance. They have resulted in a pattern of overlapping interests, i.e., occupational solidarity, gender alliances, and coalitions around healthcare restructuring, which have supported or even promoted militancy among nurses, despite the multiple forces arrayed against them. the professional commitments of nurses to the provision of patient care have clashed with healthcare restructuring, nursing shortages, a greater intensity of work, precarious employment, and gender subordination. However, a redefinition of caring should be considered. Nurses' dedication to caring work has dissuaded them from going on strike in the past few decades. Might we assume that this same dedication may encourage nurses nowadays? Could it also be applied in anesthetic nurses? Is the anesthetic consultant nurse role a feasible concept? Could the consultant nurse concept be transferred to anesthesiology? This idea, derived from the work of Kari in 2007, is outside my field of expertise, but as a researcher, I'm used in raising questions. Would this concept improve the quality of patient care by strengthening professional leadership and extending the clinical career ladder? Could the anesthetic consultant nurse be accepted as an expert in their clinical field, possessing expert leadership and visionary skills? Kari based the concept of emergency care nurse consultancy on 4 domains. 1. Expert practice. 2. Professional leadership. 3. Education. And 4. Research. Are anesthetic nurses able to cover all these domains? Aside from expert practice and education, is professional leadership and sufficient research available in anesthetic nurses? There is little evidence on whether nurses are aware of the possibilities of research, how much research they use in their clinical practice, or even how their clinical practice, competencies, and attitudes are researched. All nurses, regardless of their position, identified barriers to performing research. As stated by Bonner and Sandow in 2008, nurses require specific research education, clinical nursing leadership, and work environments conducive to ensuring practice is evidence-based. A positive attitude towards research by senior nurse managers could have the potential to influence other nurses to establish an active nursing research culture and promote evidence-based practice in the workplace. Answers to raised questions could bring the added potential of providing inspiration for junior nurses and retaining experienced anesthetic nurses in the clinical arena. We are approaching a take-home message. The urgency to produce an adequate supply of nurses, siding with the professional imperative of promoting safety, is a critical issue in nursing. To effectively consider these issues, They must be viewed together and managed as polarities rather than as problems. In Slovenia, these issues have been addressed by proposing and developing the baccalaureate entry level for certain roles in nursing. Efforts have been made to create and introduce advanced practice roles that require more highly educated nurses, although within the educational system in Slovenia, grades such as Doctor of Nursing Practice or Clinical Nurse Leader have still not been established. Unfortunately, these actions have spread professional polarization and undermined the potential power of the largest group of healthcare providers in the country. At this very moment, there is a struggle within the professional group, i.e., less educated nurses against those with higher education, which clearly calls for management by nurse leaders to address these concerns as interdependencies that must be balanced rather than as problems that must be solved. If managed well, this approach would unite the profession and reduce the greatest risk, which is the evaluating of nursing. It is a subjective impression that nurses will continue to be devalued if there is no professional identity and support for their roles. There is therefore a need to define a career pathway for nurses deciding to enter anesthesiology. In my opinion, providing a career structure and choice for the nurse to become a clinical leader or a manager of health services will improve recruitment and retention. Aside from its higher purpose of making a difference to the health of society, there is a need for nurses to join forces and to focus on the development of professional competencies through a well-established educational system. It is obvious that more research is needed on role construction and professional development in nursing. The outcomes should make healthcare organizations and decision makers change their perceptions and value nurses also as clinical leaders in care teams. Let me conclude with another Benjamin Franklin's thoughts. We must indeed all hang together, or assuredly we shall all hang separately. Ladies and gentlemen, I wish you a successful conference and hope it may leave you even more united. Do not overlook every day's advantages. Thank you.
Dear friends, I would like to extend my thanks to all our distinguished speakers tonight and also to everybody who is part of this Congress. Ladies and gentlemen, dear guests, this has been a wonderful afternoon of heartfelt companionship and valuable new friendships. So allow me to take my leave from you. I have enjoyed your company very much. In the days to follow, we would like to have a most successful Congress, and we would like you to explore Slovenia as a jewel of beauty, culture, and hospitality. Now I'm inviting you to surrender yourself to gourmet's delights of spring dishes. Enough talking for now. Let the gourmet's language of today's evening speak. Thank you for your attention and bon appétit. Have a most pleasant stay with us and hope to see you again. Thank you.